On my birthday, I was in a car accident and ended up trapped in the wreckage with my husband's first love. My husband, a doctor, rushed to the scene and chose to save the terrified her first. I was stuck in the deformed seat, covered in blood, begging for help, but all I received was his cold response. "She's pregnant, there are two lives at stake. Can't you understand the situation?" Later, a passerby recorded his heroic rescue and uploaded it online, quickly gaining countless blessings. His friends all treated me like a joke, shoving the video in my face with mockery, taunting, "Margaret, you're not going to be petty about this, are you?" Fresh out of surgery, I clenched the miscarriage notice in my hand and gave a faint smile. "No, I won't be," I said, indifferent. After all, this marriage with Bruno Liu is not something I plan to hold on to. Let her have him. Chapter 1. The moment the anesthesia wore off, the pain came crashing in like a tidal wave. I lay in the hospital bed, pale and trembling uncontrollably, unable to bear the searing agony in my chest. It felt like being pierced by a blade. In front of me, a video kept playing on my phone. In the footage of the crash, a man rushed to rescue a wounded woman. Their eyes locked amid the chaos, a moment of blazing intensity, their gazes tangled with longing, like a scene from a romantic drama. The comment section overflowed. A hero saving a beauty so sweet and full of love. The way he looked at her, this must be true love. Crying such a handsome man and beautiful woman. Someone lock them together and throw away the key. Everyone praised them as the perfect couple. If that hero hadn't been my husband Bruno, and if I hadn't been the unconscious one at the accident scene, maybe I could have calmly offered my blessings too. Self-destructively dragging the video progress bar over and over again, I tried to hold it together, but the tears eventually spilled down in shame. Today was my birthday. Bruno had promised to celebrate with me, but all it took was Camille saying, "Bruno, my stomach feels off," and he rushed to pick her up without hesitation. In his anxious hurry to get her to the hospital, he stepped on the gas and caused the accident. Thanks to Bruno's quick reaction, Camille escaped with only a scare. I, however, slammed into the car door when he swerved, ending up trapped in the twisted back seat, unable to move. Blood poured from my lower body, and the stabbing pain in my abdomen made me lose consciousness. When I weakly begged him for help, he coldly replied, "Millie is pregnant. 2 lives. Margaret, can't you be more rational right now?" Covered in blood, I was stunned. It felt like my brain had just been hit with a hammer, blank and ringing. Through my blurred vision, I saw him run toward Camille without a single glance back. I heard him whisper, "Don't be scared, I'm here." His voice was gentle, trembling with worry. He was terrified that Camille might be hurt. The stench of gasoline overwhelmed me as everything went dark. Luckily, I survived, but at a terrible cost. Gently stroking my aching belly, I let out a mocking smile and finally turned off the looping video. For a moment, everything felt meaningless. Woken again in the middle of the night by the pain, I got up to ask for painkillers only to run into Bruno in the hallway. Even after work hours, he was still in his white coat, the hem untidy, his face tired. I asked calmly, "Were you with Camille?" Bruno looked at me blankly. "Margaret, I don't have time for your nonsense." He said it so flatly, so firmly, not even flinching as he lied. But he couldn't hide the strong scent of gardenias clinging to him, Camille's favorite perfume. How intimate must they have been for her fragrance to linger so stubbornly? Staring at Bruno, I suddenly felt nothing. "Let's get divorced," I said. "Margaret, what kind of stunt are you pulling now?" Bruno's face twisted. "Just because I didn't celebrate your birthday?" I didn't answer, but he seemed to take that as a yes. His lips curled into a mocking smirk. "Millie's pregnancy is delicate right now. As a friend, what's wrong with giving her extra care? You're being petty. So dramatic. Just impossible to deal with." Bruno was about to continue his lecture when his phone rang. Instantly, his stern expression softened. No need to guess, it was Camille. In front of his first love, Bruno never hesitated to show softness. After hanging up, he muttered, "I've been really busy lately. I'll make it up to you another day," then turned and walked away in long strides. Bruno had always been like this. Every time he left me for Camille, he'd throw me a little sweetness as compensation. He couldn't see the pale hospital gown on me. Not a single word of worry. Even when I nearly died, there was not the faintest hint of guilt. His heart was filled with Camille. I used to trap myself in this self-deceiving marriage, weaving my own prison. But now I'm truly tired. I raised my hand to wipe the cold from my face, and to my surprise I no longer felt sad. Chapter 2. No one would believe me if I told them it was Bruno who had pursued me first. We met through a blind date, bonded over shared interests, and after more conversation, we realized our families had known each other for years, as though it felt only natural when we walked down the aisle into marriage. I knew he had a first love he'd been with for 7 years, but we were adults. I believed he would handle it maturely. I was too naive. Ever since Camille returned to the country pregnant, my world flipped upside down. The always composed, steady Bruno became someone I didn't recognize. When I had a high fever, he took Camille to the countryside to watch the stars. On our wedding anniversary, he went to fix her plumbing, leaving me alone in an empty restaurant. Whenever I hinted at feeling hurt, it became jealousy, ugly, shameful. Even though I was his wife, I was always the second choice. But all those future grievances no longer had anything to do with me. Before logging out of WeChat, I noticed a message from the research director. Once again, he was urging me to go abroad to continue my studies. In fact, he had mentioned it as early as 6 months ago, but I had politely turned it down because of those 2 years with Bruno, because I couldn't bear to leave him. I had just wanted a simple, peaceful life with him. But even such a small wish was too much for Bruno to fulfill. I took a deep breath and called the director. Director Sun, I wanted to ask, is the overseas training opportunity you mentioned before still available? He sounded surprised at first, then exclaimed happily, Of course. I've kept this spot just for you. It starts in less than a month. Can you be ready? I immediately scheduled a divorce application online. Don't worry, I said. Everything will be ready in time. This time, it's enough time to end this marriage. Chapter 3. The next afternoon, I packed my things and called a taxi home. I was exhausted. I went straight to the guest room, pulled up the covers, and fell into a deep sleep. I was awakened by loud knocking. Margaret. It was Bruno's voice, unusually anxious and irritated. Unable to bear the noise, I reluctantly got up and opened the door. Bruno stood there with fury in his eyes, glaring at me as if I had done something terribly wrong. I was confused. Sorry, I was too tired and didn't hear you, I yawned. Why didn't you call me when you were discharged? He asked, his brows tightly furrowed. I blinked. There was no need to bother you over something so minor. A car crash injury is minor? Bruno stared at me, voice full of blame. Margaret, did you hurt yourself on purpose just to get back at me? How could you be so reckless? In the past, being wrongly accused like this would have triggered an argument. But this time, I simply smiled calmly. You're overreacting. The doctor said I recovered well and discharged me. But thank you for your concern. My tone was polite, distant. Bruno looked stunned. He was about to speak again when a flirty female voice chimed in from behind him. Margaret, are you home? Why didn't you say anything? In the middle of the night, Camille appeared in a light camisole, acting like the mistress of the house. I instinctively glanced at Bruno. He rubbed his nose awkwardly. Millie's house had a sudden leak and she's pregnant, so I couldn't let her stay there alone. Pregnant women need extra care. I understand, I said with a small smile. Bruno was momentarily surprised. You're not angry? I chuckled. Helping a friend is normal, especially when she can't be alone right now. And you're a doctoress is your expertise. Camille's expression shifted slightly. Bruno looked as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. After a few moments of awkward silence, I turned to head back to bed. But suddenly, Bruno grabbed my hand. Margaret, I know you must be mad. I paused, surprised. Bruno pressed his lips together. You didn't used to react like this. A flood of memories came rushing back. Every time Camille called, he would go to her without fail. We had fought over it countless times. I had cried, yelled, even scratched his face in desperation. But he never softened. He would scold me instead. Only someone with a filthy heart sees filth in everything. But now, facing them again, I felt nothing. I didn't love him anymore. Naturally, I didn't care. So, I gently pulled my hand away. It's late. Don't overthink it. Bruno stared at his empty hand in disbelief. Bruno, my stomach really hurts. Camille suddenly clutched her abdomen, her eyes watery, looking as if she might faint. Millie, Bruno cried, panic washing over his face. He rushed to hold her, then turned back to me, glaring. Margaret, I thought you'd changed, but I was wrong. Picking a fight with a pregnant woman? Don't you fear karma? With a loud bang, he stormed off with Camille, slamming the door behind him. This kind of scene had happened so many times before. But this time, I felt no waves in my heart. I went downstairs, made myself a snack, overate, and couldn't sleep. Lying in bed scrolling through my phone, I accidentally came across Camille's post from 3 minutes ago. In the hospital, she leaned sweetly on Bruno's shoulder while his long fingers gently caressed her swollen belly. The caption read, "My Bruno will be the best dad in the world." The comment section was full of cheers, mostly from mutual friends of Bruno and Camille. Some even tagged me, trying to provoke a reaction. I looked down at my flat belly, a wry smile tugging at my lips. I lightly tapped the screen and replied, "Congratulations on getting exactly what you wanted." Chapter 4. In the days that followed, Bruno never came home again. I enjoyed the peace and focused on my recovery. In the meantime, I contacted a lawyer and drafted a divorce agreement. Before I knew it, it was time for my follow-up appointment at the hospital. I didn't expect to run into Bruno. The moment he saw me, his face turned cold. That post Millie made on WeChat was just a joke. You provoked her, and pregnant women are sensitive. If something happens to her and the baby, can you take responsibility? If something happens to her and the baby, Bruno's words suddenly triggered my memory. The memories I had tried so hard to forget came flooding back: the car crash, the blood, the unconsciousness, the sympathetic look on the surgeon's face, and the form I had forced myself to sign for the induced labor. I froze, my heart feeling as if it were being torn apart by giant hands, the pain suffocating. Seeing my silence, Bruno assumed I felt guilty and grabbed my hand. "You have to apologize to Millie today and ask for her forgiveness." Even though I'd been resting for several days, the miscarriage from the accident had left me weak and drained. Still, Bruno dragged me to Camille's hospital room by force. It was full of people. The moment they saw me, their faces twisted with scorn. They were the same people from that comment section on the video. As I stepped in, Camille casually mentioned she wanted to eat mangoes. Bruno's hands didn't stop moving. Normally, he didn't like touching fruit, and as a doctor, he was extremely particular about his hands. I remember once during my period I asked him to make me a bowl of brown sugar water, and he coldly refused. "Margaret, I'm a doctor. My hands are valuable. Can't you just order takeout?" But now, he let sticky juice soak his hands as he patiently peeled an entire plate of mangoes for Camille. It was a treatment I had never received. The mocking stares toward me intensified. Watching all of this, I remained calm. We were getting divorced. None of it had anything to do with me. Camille, as if just realizing something, joked to Bruno. "Come on, Bruno. You're being so sweet to me. Margaret must be dying of jealousy." Bruno paused what he was doing, looked at me deliberately, and sneered. "Do you need me to remind you every time to do things for yourself?" Then he tossed a mango from the fruit basket at me. I instinctively caught it and placed it on the nearby table. Bruno was momentarily stunned. He was surprised because I didn't react gratefully. I didn't take the bait. Someone in the room rolled their eyes. "Oh, she's gotten clever now. Knows how to retreat to advance. What a tactic." Hearing this, Bruno's stern expression softened inexplicably. He continued peeling fruit for Camille, but his eyes kept drifting toward me, as if waiting to catch a flicker of emotion. But I stayed indifferent, quietly gazing out the window. Under the harsh lights, his face darkened slightly. Camille's eyes welled with tears, and she said carefully, "Margaret, if it really bothers you, you can have all these mangoes." Her pitiful act cast me as the villain, Camille's usual tactic. She wanted to provoke me, hoping Bruno would scold me again. But I no longer cared. I smiled calmly, stood up, and was about to leave. But suddenly Bruno stood too, blocking my path with a frown. Margaret, why aren't you angry? What are you talking about? I looked at him in confusion. His expression grew slightly frantic. I'm taking such good care of Millie, doesn't it bother you? I answered politely. Your friends, it's reasonable to look after each other. No, it's not reasonable, he muttered, his lips pressed into a tight line, the corners of his eyes red. Why are you ignoring me? Why aren't you jealous? You weren't like this before. Next to him, Camille's face nearly fell apart. Bruno, what are you talking about? Shut up. Bruno shouted at her, completely uncharacteristic. Everyone in the room froze. Even I was slightly stunned. This anxiety and agitation once, it had been me. The noise drew the attention of a passing doctor. He looked familiar. He was the one who treated me during the emergency. Entering the room, he turned to me first and asked with concern, Miss Gu, how have you been? Any vaginal bleeding? I didn't even have time to reply. Vaginal bleeding, Margaret, do you have a condition? Oh, was I not supposed to ask? Camille exclaimed, feigning surprise. Her innocent tone masked a clear malice in her eyes. Even people in the hallway started to glance over, their stares filled with undisguised ridicule and disdain. But in the next moment, vaginal bleeding in women, excluding pathological causes, is a normal physiological occurrence. If you don't know, shut your mouth and stop misleading people. The doctor scolded Camille harshly, then turned to Bruno with a look of disappointment. Dr. Lou, your wife just had a miscarriage from a car accident. Her body is still weak. How can you lose your temper with her as her husband? Chapter 5. The doctor didn't stay long. After a few more instructions, he left the room. But even after 5 minutes, silence hung heavy in the air. Everyone's eyes darted between Bruno and me, yet no one dared to speak. Finally, Bruno broke the silence. You were pregnant? And you had a miscarriage? Margaret, why didn't you tell me? There was no need. I could handle it on my own. Faced with his stunned and angry expression, I let it go lightly. That little life no longer existed. There was no point in saying more. Seeing my indifferent face, Bruno suddenly erupted. Margaret, that was my child too. How could you say it wasn't necessary? His voice was hoarse, his face full of disbelief. Looking into his reddened eyes, I sneered. Are those crocodile tears? I had never intended to mention the child. Our marriage was already beyond saving, and a baby wouldn't change that. I didn't want to disturb the peace of that little soul, nor turn it into a bargaining chip in a broken relationship. But Bruno, this is what you brought upon yourself. I don't care if my words hurt you. I want you to feel even a fraction of the pain I endured. When the accident happened, you were right there. I lay in a pool of blood, my knees pierced by shards of glass, begging you to save me. Bruno, what were you doing then? Seeing the trembling in his eyes, I smiled faintly. Oh, I remember. You chose to save Camille completely uninjured and merely scared. You made your choice, so why blame me now? Besides, Camille's pregnant. As long as you're willing, having more people call you dad won't be a loss, right? Bruno was speechless, his body shaking, fists clenched tightly. Just then, Camille exclaimed dramatically, Margaret, I didn't know you went through something so awful as a mother. I understand how painful it is to lose a child. You must be heartbroken over your miscarriage. She gently stroked her prominent belly, her voice dripping with false compassion while hiding a cruel smile. As compensation, why don't you become the godmother of my baby? Bruno cares so much for this child. Every time I feel the slightest discomfort, he panics completely. If you treat this baby like your own, maybe it'll help ease the pain of your loss. I had always known Camille was shameless, but I never imagined she could be this vile. Her words sparked a fire in me that had long been buried. I walked up to her bed, raised my hand, and slapped her hard. Startled, she fell back onto the bed, clutching her cheek in disbelief. I used to ignore you, I said coldly, because a fly doesn't land on a clean egg. Bruno couldn't control himself. I'm not someone who disciplines wives or bothers with mistresses. Your constant provocations are childish, but you never should have insulted my child. If it happens again, it won't just be a slap. I scoffed, then picked up the plate of mangoes and walked toward Bruno. Raising my wrist, I tilted the plate and let the fruit tumble over him. In an instant, his pristine white coat became a sticky mess. Do you know why I didn't take the mango? I erased the sarcasm from my eyes and looked at him directly. Because I'm allergic. I had a reaction right in front of you on our first date. If you can't even remember what your wife eats, don't pretend to care. Stop pretending to be some noble husband, Dr. Lou. I laughed heartily, enjoying the sudden paleness on his face. Chapter 6. Before leaving, I dropped the divorce papers on the table. Then I headed to my follow-up appointment. Surprisingly, Bruno stubbornly insisted on accompanying me. I don't accept the divorce. I'm your husband, Margaret. I have that right. I didn't bother arguing. The health came first. After the examination, the doctor said I was recovering well. Hearing this, Bruno let out a sigh of relief, visibly easing. He then took the initiative to pay the bills and collect the medication. I watched coolly. I had no problem accepting free labor. Even when I tried to call a taxi home, he insisted on driving me himself. Margaret, given your condition, I'm worried. He looked at me cautiously, as if I were a fragile porcelain doll that needed delicate handling. Before I could respond, an older lady walking by suddenly called out, Dr. Lou, it really is you. Seeing Bruno's surprised expression, she smiled even more warmly. Don't you remember me? I was your patient. When your wife was pregnant and hospitalized, I was in the bed next to hers. Oh my, I've never seen a man as wonderful as you, Dr. Lou. Despite your busy schedule, you always found time to be by your wife's side serving her tea, massaging her cramped legs. I was so envious. I hope my daughter finds a husband as loving as you when she gets married. The lady chattered unhappily. Bruno stood frozen, then looked at me in panic, his face filled with fear and unease. I listened quietly, feeling the weight of Bruno's meticulous care, but all of it was for Camille. After about 5 minutes of non-stop praise, the woman finally turned her attention to me. Oh, is this one of your patients, Dr. Lou? Oh, dear, I'm so sorry for holding you up. I smiled but said nothing. I didn't want any connection with Bruno. We would soon be strangers after the divorce. But for some reason, Bruno suddenly grabbed my hand and said seriously to the woman, Nosh's my wife. Oh, your wife. Wait, your wife. The woman's expression shifted from surprise to disgust. Within moments, her gaze toward Bruno turned bitter. Forcing a smile, she turned to leave and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, having a wife but always clinging to a pregnant woman, he looks decent, but he's worse than a beast. Men like him are everywhere. It's disgusting. Oh, dear, I wish for the wrong thing. My daughter will definitely find a faithful man, not someone like this. Ugh. I couldn't understand Bruno's behavior. Why stir up more trouble? Was he losing his mind? And yet, he still insisted on personally driving me home. You just had a miscarriage. You need to take care of your body, or you'll suffer long-term effects. Seeing his serious tone, I accepted without interest. It didn't matter. A free driver was a free driver. Bruno told me to wait at the hospital entrance while he went to get the car from the parking lot. Before leaving, he gripped my hand tightly. Wait for me 5 minutes, okay? His usually cold eyes carried a rare hint of pleading. I agreed. But after 10 minutes of waiting, there was still no sign of Bruno or his car. I looked down and opened the ride-hailing app on my phone. 15 minutes later, I was home, safe and sound. As I drank a cup of warm milk, the door opened again. Bruno appeared at the entrance, disheveled. He pressed his lips together and looked at me. Just a bit more time, Margaret. Why didn't you wait for me? Chapter 7. Why didn't I wait for him? Good question. Flipping through the documents in my hand, I didn't even look up. I did wait. You were late. You broke your promise. But it was just a bit more time. You went to see Camille, didn't you? I cut him off sharply. Don't even bother denying it. There's her lipstick on your neck. The mark was clear, bold, intentional. Camille had staged it, and it would be a pity not to finish her act. Millie suddenly fainted. I was afraid something might happen to her. Bruno's face showed unmistakable panic. There's really nothing between us. You misunderstood. His hoarse voice carried a subtle hint of grievance, as if I had caused him unbearable pain. But I was the one who truly suffered. I laughed bitterly, rage welling up in me. You feel wronged over something so small? Bruno, the pain I've endured for you goes far beyond this. When we got married, you cried and swore to make me happy for the rest of my life, to never let me shed a tear. But what happened instead? Every bit of suffering and humiliation I've experienced came from you. 2 months ago, during a heavy storm, you promised to pick me up, but halfway there, Camille called, and you left me on the side of the road. I walked in the rain for 2 hours, caught a bacterial infection, and ended up in the hospital. A month ago, during a business trip, there was a local riot. I was so terrified I took the first 14-hour flight home just to find comfort in your arms, only to see you hugging Camille, singing her a birthday song. A week ago, I was bleeding heavily, begging you to save me and our baby. I was desperate, and what did I get in return? You took Camille and got into the ambulance without even looking back, without a single word of concern. If it hadn't been for the firefighters who arrived in time, I would have died in that gasoline-soaked wreckage, never getting the chance to hear your pitiful excuses. Clenching my fists, I couldn't help but scream. Tell me, Bruno, what right do you have to complain to me? Bruno stood frozen, his lips trembling, trying to speak but unable to say a word. I took a deep breath, ready to leave, but Bruno suddenly grabbed my wrist. Margaret, I was wrong. I'm a fool. Hit me, yell at me, but please don't divorce me. During the accident, I didn't know you were pregnant. I thought it was just a minor injury. We can have more children in the future. I'll take care of you. Please give me a chance to make things right. My answer was a slap, filled with all the hatred I'd kept bottled up. Bruno, you're truly despicable. I laughed with bitterness as tears streamed down my face. So, even now you haven't looked at my medical records. If you had, you'd know I was hemorrhaging when you left me behind. I went into cardiac arrest on the operating table. To save my life, the doctors had to replace almost all my blood and remove my uterus. And now you dare to tell me we can have more children? With every word of accusation, Bruno's expression grew more frantic until he looked completely devastated, pale as a ghost. I sneered, if you truly feel guilty, sign the divorce papers quickly and give me more money in the settlement. With that, I turned and went upstairs to rest, not caring about his reaction. Chapter 8. But Bruno didn't seem ready to give up. No matter how many times I reminded him, he still refused to sign the divorce papers. He began taking care of my meals daily. Every morning, he brought fresh roses. Wherever I went, he followed like a shadow I couldn't shake. After 2 or 3 days of this, I couldn't take it anymore. Bruno, do you think this makes any sense? My expression was cold, my tone filled with annoyance. You're disrupting my life. Aren't doctors supposed to be busy? Bruno pressed his lips and gave a bitter smile. I've been suspended from the hospital. Someone had submitted an anonymous report accusing Bruno of having inappropriate relations with patients. His favoritism toward Camille in the hospital was exposed, leading to suspension and investigation. One misstep, and all his years of hard work could come crashing down. But none of that mattered to me. Facing my calm, unshaken expression, Bruno forced a smile. Now, I just want to make it up to you. Fine. I'll give you that chance. Bruno's eyes lit up with hope, only to plunge into despair a second later. Sign the divorce papers. I crushed his delusion coldly. If you don't, after 2 years of separation, I can file for divorce anyway. Once, I had been blinded by love and suffered deeply. Now, I was finally clear-headed. Nothing could stop me from moving forward. Margaret, I know I hurt you badly before, but I truly regret it. Can't you give me a chance to make things right? Bruno looked at me helplessly, eyes full of remorse. I stared back indifferently. Can you give me back my child? Chapter 9. After the miscarriage, I thought I was strong enough to endure the pain. But every night, in the stillness, I could hear the sound of a baby crying echoing in my ears. I kept waking up from nightmares, soaking my pillow with tears again and again. Rationally, I kept trying to console myself. Losing the baby was the best outcome. This child had come too suddenly. There was no future in my relationship with Bruno. Bringing a baby into a loveless family would have been unfair to them. And besides, this child was lost in an accident. I didn't have to bear the guilt of having taken its life with my own hands. But the uncontrollable sobbing was real. The countless sleepless nights were real. The many donations I made to temples for longevity lamps weren't fake either. Despite all my self-deception, I still couldn't forgive myself. I felt like a failed mother, hating myself for losing a life because of my carelessness. Before I could even embrace the sudden joy, I had to endure the pain of separation. I hated myself, and I hated Bruno even more. Countless times I imagined if I had been rescued first that day, would the child destined never to be mine have entered this world safely? Would it have been a lively little boy? Or a girl who looked just like me? I'll never know. And I'll never have the chance to know. That night, Bruno stayed in the living room all night. When I woke up the next morning, the floor was littered with cigarette butts and on the table, a divorce agreement with his signature. After finalizing the documents, I headed straight to the airport without hesitation, stepping into a future that belonged solely to me. Daily training and study kept me incredibly busy. By the time I had fully settled into my new life, half a year had passed. I reconnected with some old friends back home and unexpectedly got a piece of gossip. Margaret, you wouldn't believe how miserable Camille's life is now. After the divorce, to avoid unnecessary drama, I made a simple post on social media, using the excuse, "Feelings have fade weary going back to being friends." No need to be too harsh in the adult world. But Camille couldn't resist flaunting and provoking. A curious netizen dug up the dirt between her and Bruno. Not all friends were as clueless as their mutual circle. Many were outraged and sided with me. Suddenly, their reputations were in ruins. And just when Camille was about to give birth, the baby's real father was finally identified. A wealthy woman came forward, accusing Camille of being a shameless mistress and sent people to beat her until she miscarried, bleeding profusely. In her final month of pregnancy, her life was hanging by a thread. Although the doctors saved Camille, the baby was lost. She was left with permanent damage, bedridden for life. She never even got a chance to seek justice. That wealthy woman was merciless, using mentally unstable individuals to carry out the attack. With the right medical records, they escaped jail easily. As for Bruno, he was caught up in the chaos and dismissed by the disciplinary committee. No one knows where he's working now, probably some shady little clinic as an assistant. It's said that his life is even more miserable and humiliating. But none of that matters to me anymore. After hearing the gossip, I stretched, then dove back into my studies. From that point on, I never received any more news from home.